Oof, Roma, they fall 2-0 to Como this evening in a match that had it all, Andy. Refereeing mistakes, some of the most ineffective football that I have seen from a team, never mind just from Roma this season. We had, as per usual, as the standard operating procedure goes, at least once or twice per season, an aged or a absolute bidoneva goalkeeper pulls out the spectacular performance. Of course, before getting into all of that, a thank you to our newest patron, Lasse Agergard, and of course to all of our other wonderful patrons who make this absolute psych ward portion of the hospital possible. We thank you all for your support, and we thank you all for hanging in there with us through this. Once this comes out, once the CIA, once they finally release these documents that this has all been a psyop, we will at least all feel better about it. But in the moment, it doesn't feel great. But thank you all for sticking with us at RomaPress on social media. And of course, to join the Patreon, patreon.com/RomaPress. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the fact that after all of these years, Andy, let's start there. After all of these years, you and I have been doing this, all of the articles, all of the podcasts, all of the recording, all of the live streams, all of the video podcasts, I made the most elementary mistake of them all. In the 92nd minute, I began to record the patron post-match reaction episode that I do after every league match. It was 0-0. I get 2 to 3 minutes in, and naturally, Como score. Okay, fine. Erase all of the audio, update all of the images for the website, for the social media. Fine, okay. 1-0, not great. In the final seconds, they had another. Okay, update everything again. I've known this. I knew this was going to happen. The second I pressed record, I should have known. Lesson never learned. I never learned. You never learn. We do this every single time. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Stupid. But this is so normal to me that I can't even be that upset. I laugh now. I absolutely laugh that, okay, Roma going for a draw. Terrible results, frankly.
I'm not upset. When I was like at the 89th minute, I was like, okay, let me go to the bathroom, and somewhere in the back of my head, I thought, what would be delightful is if I went to the bathroom and I came back and Roma were all of a sudden leading. That would be a delightful thing, and I've seen it happen before. But guess what? You know what I've also seen is Roma
Yes.
being 0-0, and then when you think that, okay, maybe this is, they are the bigger side. This is clutch time. This is the time of the stars to shine, and yet we get Gabrielloni, who scores his first Serie A goal,
Of course.
and then obviously Nico Pass puts us to sleep, and that's about it. That was not the scenario. That is a scenario that I should have known. But I chose to omit it. Why? Because I think I got lazy. It's the holiday period. Soon we'll be all sitting down to eat a lot of food, and I was just wanting to be cheerful, in anticipation of the big days ahead. And I guess lesson learned. This time, lesson learned. Maybe the fact that I badmouthed Como on the last episode, maybe that was also the spark, because tonight Como deserved it way more than Roma, especially in the second half. Roma were nowhere to be found, and Como, despite having a really terrible roster,
Horrible.
they did everything to win it. So, if I'm not upset, is one, because you're absolutely right. Like, this was the most unpredictable and yet at the same time the most predictable thing that could have happened to Roma. And then Roma didn't deserve it, so you can't even be sitting there and be like, "Ah, God damn it! If had we done this, had we done that?" No, unfortunately, this is the way it goes. Como, classic example of a smaller side with lesser means that wants it more.
They did want it more. I couldn't agree with you more as far as not deserving it. Roma, that is. They ended the match with one shot on goal. You look at that formation of Como. Andy, I said on my post match reaction, there are two, maybe three players within that 11 that are worthy of, forget starting, but even being within the squad of a big, of being in the squad of any team in the big 4 to 5 leagues in Europe. You look at that squad, and we are looking at a surefire, without question, Serie B side. Meanwhile, you look across to Roma, and you are left wondering, how is it possible that this team, this group of players, struggles to get anything going against the team placed 18th in Serie a team that on both ends, attack, defense, pretty poor this season by all measures, and a team that has struggled to not only stay healthy, to find continuity, and a team that, frankly, I put in permanent ink their place for relegation this season. I'm left stunned. And on top of that, too, there really is no room for nuance in this discussion as to whether this, because there were some in the Patreon group chat that, while they were depressed, I suppose trying to rationalize it just slightly. Oh, we were missing this guy, such as Paredes, who I think, of course, would have helped. The midfield today was so ineffective. They could not hold on to the ball. They could not string together more than 3 passes at a time. And a match like this is one where Paredes undoubtedly would have made his presence felt, particularly given the fact that in attack you were so toothless, spineless, unable to create much of anything. Having a guy like him obviously would have been an added plus. There's no debating that. But Andy, this is a team. This result, this match, this fixture should have never been in question. Not even slightly. And the more particular aspect of this comes right after the first time all season. Let's be very clear. Prior to this is the first time out of the entire season, for the first time in the 2024-25 campaign, where you, as an AS Roma supporter, whether you're in the media, even if you are just from a neutral perspective following the team, it is the first time where you have felt even not good, just not horrible to the point where you want to hurl yourself out of a 25 stories tall window about this team. In the past week, it seemed like they have started to at least understand the task at hand, understand where the mistakes came earlier in the season, and finally at least unlock something within themselves that gets them to find the back of the net, to not make elementary mistakes, to give complete and full effort, completely opposite of what we saw in that final match under Ivan Juric. It seemed like over the last week, I don't care who the opponent was, they handled Braga in the Europa League. They handled Lecce last weekend. It's the first time we're not feeling good. We're not even feeling neutral. We're just backing away from the window. That's it. This is the first time we have allowed ourselves to step back from going through the glass. And of course, the second we begin to feel that way, they go out and they lay an egg of a performance and a result. And it's one where there's zero alibi, zero rationalization. If we want to talk about the refereeing mistakes, I suppose we can. I don't know what good that does. I don't know what you achieve by necessarily pointing that out. Now, if it had finished 0-0, I can at least entertain that discussion. But this is one where you have nowhere to hide. There is no place to go. You have to face this. And the problem I have is, again, it comes at a time where you just started to see a creak of light.
But
You are
but
stuck in
that's
the
who they
tunnel.
are.
And
That's who they are. That's who they've been all season long. And mind you,
mm,
once again, because I always turn to the big narrative, this is 15 away games without a win. Okay, so
mm,
this is not a problem of this season. This team. This is a problem that goes back to last season, to April. The last away win was in April. Okay. So let that sink in. 15 games playing away. This season, we've played away to a number of smaller sides, such as Como tonight, and we can't get the job done. And that has been the theme all season long of this team showing glimpses, but never enough. And
mm.
that's why we had to brace ourselves following these last two victories, uh, against Lecce and Braga. We had to brace ourselves because this team hasn't done enough to prove that they can continue down this path. Everything comes at a cost. As soon as you increase the tempo, as soon as these guys have to play every 2.5 days, 3 days basically, they're lost because they really need time not only to recharge physically but also mentally. You could clearly see that these guys are also, they, once again, really do think we live in a bubble, because after the winning over Braga, I mean, there were images of Saud wearing the same jersey
Yes.
as Cafu in the 2001 Scudetto run. You know what I mean? Like that's how insane it gets. How does a team that has struggled with moodiness, with morale all season long, supposed to keep its feet uh, on the ground when everybody around them is blowing things out of proportion
Yeah.
just for two wins in a row? Not even two
Yes.
wins in the league in the row, two wins in the row. So um, tonight we had to make that extra step, and yet once again we see that without Kone at his best, without Hummels in the lineup, we become hopeless. We are unable to give Dovbik anything of value. The guy is struggling already by himself physically, and then we don't produce anything. We end up with one shot on goal. I mean, think about it. So what we're talking about is a team that at the first sign of adversity, at the first sign of fatigue, of anything, they shut down. They lose everything that they've learned in the past two games, gone. Tonight, there was none of the Roma that we'd seen against Lecce and Braga.
No, there wasn't. And again, I I agree with your assessment of the moodiness. Nobody's going to debate that, but it's there is some irony in the fact that this was the first time of the entire season where again you begin to see. I wouldn't even call it a glimpse. I would call it the flash where you think, okay, there is something there. There is something there. At least is a heartbeat, so we know they are alive. They still have a pulse within them, and then they go and do this. The other problem I have too is a match like today. Ineffectiveness is probably the biggest, or suppose the most appropriate general term that can be used to describe what we saw. Because as you said, Dovbik comes in, he is given nothing. Again, I do think there is some irony in the fact that prior to that, though, Angelino, he had delivered a few balls into that area where you wonder if Dovbek, had he been in the match at that point, because we know he started on the bench, with Paulo Dybala having to fill the role of number 9, which he clearly is not capable of doing. His movements, the necessary actions he needs to take, he's just a step too slow or just doesn't know where he needs to be. There were some moments where I think, oh gosh, well, had Dovbik been in, there has to be some, again, a tad bit of irony in the fact that I think he would have gotten on the end of one of those crosses that Angelino delivered into the area. But of course, that wasn't the case. But as far as overall from front to back, this was the most ineffective match I think Roma had all season. Nothing worked. One shot on goal. Zeki Salik, I can't even find the appropriate descriptors of this guy. The up, the down. you get the full experience with him all the time. It is astonishing to me. He can go from looking like he belongs in Serie B to looking like a top level defender against the likes of Milan in the Europa League and the Europa League semi-final, or I'm sorry, quarterfinal. It's astonishing the ups and downs and the roller coaster this guy takes you on, as does all of Roma. But then there were other things that bothered me in this match. I thought Saud, is he the only Saud and Svilar, which again we just have to mention that from going forward from here on out, just assume, unless we mention it specifically, that
that he's the man of the match always. Yeah.
Yes. Unless we mention otherwise, we are just going to assume in every match occurring after today, but we mentioned this initially a month or so ago, just assume he was the best player, because he was, once again, Svilar. 2-0, the guy saved Roma's backside a number of times. And watching Saud come out, I thought he was probably the best player up until that point. No, I thought he was doing very well, in fact. So you have him come out, you have Dovbyk enter, just some very curious changes. But I still, even with all of these things in front of us, it's difficult for me to narrow down specifically.
No, I mean, but
the issue is.
No, the issue is, I think that as soon as you lose confidence, or as soon as this team sees that things don't go according to plan, they lose everything. They lose confidence. They lose creativity. They lose spirit. Because we saw against the likes of Braga that this team can attack. Like, this team can go. This team, if they are properly motivated, they can put the opponent in great difficulty. Everything that we saw against Braga was missing tonight. Everything, that kind of that push, that propensity, that tendency of Roma to just keep at it was nowhere to be found tonight. There is so many players on this roster that are capable of really good things. I mean, we've seen in the past, we've seen Pisilli, we've seen Kone, we've seen Baldanzi, we've seen Salmerkers and his impact on the team right away. So, but when you have these nights and when you don't have, I guess, enough time to prepare for a match, these guys become clueless. As soon as there is pressure on, because, hey, guess what? You have to play every 3 days. Guess what? You have to adapt. These guys panic. You can almost feel them become tense. Tonight, the anticipation was they have to carry out the same result. They have to win. They have to get their second consecutive win of the season in Serie A. That has to happen, right? Or guess what? No, that was Udinese and Venezia. Sorry. Okay, well, for the second time, get 2 wins in a row, right? And I guess that was too much to ask of them tonight. But as Ranieri just said, there are just no excuses. You are not in a position where you can dismiss these games. You're not in a position where you can be as lethargic as Roma were tonight. You take the good things in the first half, and then you look at the second half, and there was nothing. And you have to ask yourself why. Why is there that drop off? Why does the team become so submissive all of a sudden? Why don't they step onto that pitch against a lesser side, against a side that is riddled with injuries? And why don't they play the same way they played just a few days ago against Braga, or just a week ago against Lecce?
It's mind-boggling. I in this media group chat I have on WhatsApp, I forget who mentioned it, but somebody made a very apt metaphor of Roma. They said they remind me of a puzzle. You know, when you were a child and you would have several puzzles, the pieces would always get mixed up with the other ones, and then you would go into the box and you would open the box and you would try to do the puzzle. And there were pieces from 5 to 6 different puzzles, and the thing could never fit together properly. I thought that was a great comparison because, man, you have this group of guys who they've gone from playing 4 at the back with this manager under Giallorossi, holdovers from the time of Jose Mourinho. You have new guys who came in this past summer who were coming at the behest of Daniele De Rossi, and then you have Ivan Juric who preferred this guy, that guy, and then you revert back to Claudio Ranieri, or you go with Claudio Ranieri, third manager of the season. He prefers to play this way, and he prefers a whole different set of guys. It is difficult to find some cohesiveness. When somebody mentioned Paredes and his absence today, I think nobody embodies that more than him. Because just think of this season alone, how the guy went from not playing very much under Daniele De Rossi. He comes into the
No,
season
not at all. I
very
don't think. I don't think. I mean, we may have seen like 20 minutes under De Rossi.
well.
I
Do you
don't.
remember how he began the season?
Yeah,
I
no,
think out of
exactly.
shape would be
Well,
very
yeah,
kind to the guy.
that was the thing, and that's more or less, yes, a reflection of the team. You know, a team that is late, is confused, and then has a moment of high, and we know what that does here. The high, the high is so in this environment, in this city. It's so, oh my god, I can't, because you see how it changes right now, John. I'm looking at so many headlines that are making this match an issue, specifically about Dovbyk. Right now I'm looking at the two words called Caso Dovbyk, which means the
The
sort of
problem,
the
essentially, or the
problem,
issue
the
with
issue
Dovbyk.
with Dovbyk, you know. And I know that for the next week, this will be the topic that will be talked about nonstop. And my head is already hurting right now. But that's just goes to show you how it works around here. Okay. 2 days ago, we were getting nonstop interviews with Saud. We were getting his photoshopped image with him and Cafu. We had Lorenzo Pellegrini being, you know, as soon as he was linked to Galatasaray, as soon as the guy says, well, everything that I've heard so far about my future is bullshit, all the newspapers on the next day, they claimed otherwise. They said, no, now he doesn't want to leave. Now Galatasaray are not interested. Now there's no. You know, that just goes to show how absolutely mad this place is. It does not help. Trust me, you know, we get, you know, probably we get a lot of fans from other countries, from all over the world, that know the reality of the NBA, of the NFL, whatever. But nobody realizes how absolutely groundbreaking is the environment that this team operates in, because
Yes.
it is partially it does partially play a role in your successes and in your defeats, because you feel like you're on a high, you feel like you're going all the way up, like you're about to touch the stars on Thursday night, and tonight down into the
Yes.
pits of hell. And for the next few days, we're not going to hear anything but negative spin on the team. And this Roma is the representation of that, is the representation of this absolute moodiness, this unpredictability, this, you know, this very, everything is so emotional, so instinctive. There's just no rational thought behind it. And that's what Roma to me are this season. There is no plan behind them. There is no thought. There is no progress. The progress that we thought we'd seen against Lecce, against Braga, even before that against Spurs, tonight is halted. And I would like to know why. I would like to say, oh, it's fatigue, oh, it's pressure. But as always, it's an amalgamation of it. But I do really think that if you look at the state of Italian media, if you look at the reactions of the fans, the way this team gets spoken about, nibbled at by the media, by the fans, by everybody, it just gives you, I think, a perfectly accurate depiction of them this season. This is the worst start to a Serie A season. This is 8 defeats in 16 games. It's only the 4th time in Roma's history that it's happened to them. It happens for a reason. These things happen for a reason. These things don't occur by chance.
They don't occur by chance. That is absolutely correct. The frustrating part, though, is I look at the team and I just think of back to a few months ago at the excitement and the enthusiasm coming into this season. And this is still that same group of players. This is still the same team. Now, of course, we're on manager number 3 of the season. What has changed in between that time? It's not a did all of these guys collectively, did their quality just get hurled off of a cliff? Of course not. I would say, as you point out quite often, this has a lot to do with moodiness. I think this has to do with up here a lot more than it has to do with on the pitch
But
things.
I do think there is a very similar situation. I'm not going to say exactly the same because we are terrible, but look at Juventus. Look at Juventus. Juventus, I'm not saying because Juventus are still undefeated in Serie A. They've got, I don't know how many draws. I think they've got like 10 draws or something. It's really impressive. They've been very, very, very inconsistent. They win against Manchester City. In the next Serie A match, they draw to Venezia, okay, at home. Like that's, and all their signings that they thought were going to blow their minds this season are underperforming. Just look at Cup Miners, a guy who was an absolute unit under Giampiero Gasperini, surprise, surprise, or Douglas Luiz, who was being talked about constantly in the summer as this great big signing for Juventus, and everybody's shaky. The whole team is shaky. Thiago Motta's game plan is shaky. His demands to the players are shaky. The way his team tries to interpret what he's asking of them is clearly giving them problems. So I'm not saying that's exactly what happened as Roma, but I do think Juventus are similar in the way that that's a team that has messed up something along the way. And despite a good offseason, despite a positive anticipation of the new season with a new manager, fresh ideas and whatnot, exactly what we were thinking we were going to get with Daniele De Rossi entering his first full season as a coach, with a whole list of signings that he had been involved in getting done. We find ourselves more or less like that, scrambling for ideas, scrambling for consistent ideas. This team, as soon as they feel the pressure on, they don't know what plan to rely on. They don't know where to go. So I think that's, to me, that's the deflating part about tonight, is that even, in games like against Spurs or against Atalanta, where things didn't even go your way, you were still able to produce. You were still able to impress. Tonight, there was nothing.
No, there was nothing. And it's bad when many of the players are not doing the interviews, which they typically do after the match. So far, only Claudio Ranieri has been the one to step to the microphone. So naturally, things are going well within the dressing room. Well, let's end this on a positive note. It is December. It's Sampdoria, the most wonderful time of the year. We've seen this movie before. Wednesday, Roma they face Sampdoria in the Coppa Italia. I suppose the only conclusion we can draw as to what to hope for this one is everything's on the table now. I mean, you've lost to 18th in the table in Serie A. You're not really that far off from losing to a mid-table Serie B side. The leap between losing and dropping points to 18th in Serie A to being knocked out by a team in Serie B, there's not much distance between those two. So, okay, sure. Could I see it happening? Of course. This is Sampdoria, who always deliver the death punch to Roma, regardless of the competition, regardless of the time of the year. Roma are only allowed to play Sampdoria under two conditions. When the team is feeling even relatively decent about themselves, or at least you think they are going to do well in that match. That's one. And then number two, the weather has to be absolute crap. Think of how many times over the years we have played Sampdoria, particularly in Liguria, and it is just, it's raining, as it does
Always,
90% of the
always,
time in Liguria.
always, yeah. Add
But
to
the
that,
10% is worth it, by the way. I shit on every place, but I have said Liguria is either my second or third favorite part of the country. Fantastic. I don't even eat
This is not part of the
seafood.
program, John. I don't think that.
Yeah,
I
no, no.
prefer.
Hey,
I
I got to
prefer
end this
your
on a positive note, though.
negativity. I prefer the negative portion of the.
Well, okay. Well, Spezia is not so nice, but if you can get Genova, beautiful. I don't. Everything is on the table. So if you were to tell me they lose to a Serie B side, after tonight against Como, a team that more or less has 8 Serie B players starting in their 11, sure. I don't. Are we supposed to give an honest preview of this? Are we supposed to? What's your take, Andy? Because I know what godforsaken television or streaming service do you need to purchase to get a Serie B from many of our listeners?
Oh my
I mean, we
god!
have people, in Australia who
Yeah,
I can only imagine what sort of pirating you have to do in order to watch Sampdoria
that will
in
be
a league
exciting.
match
I
on a
actually,
Saturday.
I remember there was a time where Roma. I think it was in 2018, 2019. I think I should get back to that. Where Roma were doing so badly that I started watching Serie B just for fun because Roma were not providing me with any fun. So I just started watching Serie B just for the kick, And I think I may go back to that because maybe that's
Mm,
a reality that we will be soon revisiting. So.
when we
Um,
were kings, yes.
Sampdoria with a new manager, Semplici in charge. You know what that means? It means that they're going to give us problems. It's always like that. There is no preview. Like again, John, we can go all season long without doing these previews because honestly, it's useless. Frankly, it's useless. It's about as useful as you doing that post match reaction to for the patrons, where you don't know what you're gonna get, and that's. I mean, it's like that. Tonight we don't play with Mats Hummels because Mats Hummels get a bout of flu just
Yes, the
10 minutes
influenza
before the
just
match. Like,
before,
what the hell
yes.
are we talking about? Where does that happen? Why is everybody falling out of the squad because of some fever? What's the deal here? And
Yes.
I don't know. It just that is in of itself a representation of how off Roma are, because you feel like, okay, we're good, we're feeling good. Okay, Mats Hummels is starting, Manucone is starting. No matter if Leandro Paredes is there, we got this guy, we got that guy. We're the same team that won 3-0 against Sporting Braga, had so many shots on goal. We're gonna do great tonight, and then you watch this team deliver that kind of performance. I guess that's the way Roma will treat us this season. I've seen a lot of people already look ahead to May. I want to just say that I also think that I'm looking forward to May. I think in May I may be doing another pilgrimage to Santiago de
Yeah.
Compostela. So mind you, I did one 2 years ago. I'm doing it this time as well because I do feel like, listen, the last time I did the pilgrimage, guess what? We won the Conference League. Okay, I'm not. Listen, okay, I was about to. It was the last day of my pilgrimage. I was about to step into Santiago de Compostela, my destination, go to the cathedral and everything. Roma won the Conference League title on that very same day. So I'm just thinking, okay, I need to set this season back on track. What can I do? How can I contribute? If I'm seeing Daniele De Rossi, Ivan Juric out the door, if I'm seeing Claudio Ranieri come back out of retirement, the least I can do is go walk, get to my destination, and maybe that will bring Roma back from the ashes.
Well, you're at that point. You're only a couple of steps away from being Ted Kaczynski and mailing
Oh yeah.
packages to people, going on pilgrimages.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
will also be in a podcast format. So for my manifestos, please tune in to my.
Oh God! All right. Before this gets flagged by YouTube, we will
And
chat
the
with you.
NSA, yeah.
Yeah, and the NSA will chat with you all in a few days when Roma face Sampdoria in the Coppa Italia. Until then, ciao.
Ciao.